As I said at the beginning of worship this morning, we got a lot of stuff going on today. And so I'm just going to jump right into the lesson. I appreciate the way you guys have worshiped today. Again, I appreciate the Boy Scouts leading us in our flag presentation and giving us information about what they're doing. I'm looking forward to eating some soup for Super Sunday when church is over. So bear with us for a few minutes. We'll get the sermon out of the way and get on with the rest of eating and that kind of stuff, right? Okay. I don't know if you have your own personal definition of what a myth is. I looked on dictionary.com and Merriam-Webster's and some other things, and one of the more concise definitions that I found of a myth is that a myth is a widely held but false belief or idea. In other words, a lot of people believe in it, but it's actually false. A lot of people think that it's true, but it's actually not true. And there's lots of things that many of us believe in or believe to be true that actually aren't. And most of those things come from things that we were just told and just assumed that they were true. We heard somebody say somewhere that that's the way things were, and it may not actually be accurate. I'll give you a couple of examples. How many of you have heard that if you dropped a penny from, say, the Empire State Building, if you're on top of the Empire State Building, and you drop a penny, that if it hit somebody, it'd kill them? Anybody heard that before? Raise your hands real high. Okay, I've heard that too. That is a myth. It's not a fact, it's a myth. If someone were to drop a penny from the Empire State Building, between how light a penny is and the air resistance from it flipping over and over as it's coming down, it might sting a little if it hits somebody, but it's not going to kill you. Now, I did find one website that said, now, if you took like a roll of pennies and dropped that might actually do some damage. One penny's not going to do it. How many of you heard that if you swallow your gum, it takes 7 years for that to digest in your stomach? Lots of hands on that one, right? This was a myth invented by mothers years ago. In actuality, it doesn't take a whole lot longer to digest your gum than any other food. So just know things are going to be normal. That's a myth. I'm going to make some mamas mad today. I'll go ahead and I'll warn you ahead of time. How many of you heard that eating carrots improves your eyesight? It's a myth. Oh, there's kids going, yes! This was a myth that was actually started in World War II by the British Royal Air Force as propaganda. Is when Germany was bombing Great Britain at the start of World War II, and they would have all the lights out, and they would say that their pilots could see these German bombers and shoot them down with such success because they ate the carrots. And they ate a lot of carrots, and the carrots helped them to see at night. And what really was going on was they had this new radar technology, and they could find these planes by radar. Now, I will say this. Carrots do have beta-carotene, and if you have high deficiencies in beta-carotene, that can be a contributing factor to eventual blindness and bad eyesight. So you won't get x-ray vision, but go ahead and eat your carrots, okay? Okay, here's one. You guys are really going to like this. How many of you have heard or even been told that sugar makes kids hyper? You ready for this? It's a myth. I see some of y'all going, no, it's not. Come to my house. It's the truth. There's no real evidence to show that sugar causes children to become any more hyperactive than they probably already were. Now, the reason that a lot of people think that sugar hypes them up is usually because it's at birthday parties and things like that where there's lots of sugar being consumed, but it's really attributed more to the hyperness of all the children there in that space than it is the actual sugar itself. Now, too much sugar leads to obesity and hypertension and diabetes, but apparently not hyperactivity. See, some of y'all are going, I'm going to tune out everything else you say this morning, as I know that's not true. The internet said it, so it has to be true, right? There's all sorts of things that we believe to be true that may not be completely accurate. There's all sorts of things that we've been told this is it. This is the way things really are. This is the way things really are going to be. And it doesn't turn out that way. And we buy into these things. Some of us have heard, have believed in some myths about marriage. Some things that we heard to be true about marriages, some things that we assumed would be true maybe about our own marriages, or things that we believe about marriage because somebody else said that's the way things are in a good marriage. And many of those things are simply myths. They're widely held beliefs that aren't necessarily true. And that's what we're going to address this morning. That's what we're going to address over the next few weeks here at Flagstone. We're going to try to bust some of these marriage myths. Some things that maybe married folks have believed on their own, or some things that maybe yet to be married folks have been told about marriage, or some things that maybe we've believed somebody told us about our marriages and it hasn't turned out to be a reality. This morning we're going to bust one particular myth that I'm going to call the happily ever after myth. Y'all are already laughing. The happily ever after myth. And this is based on reading fairy tales and watching Disney movies and romantic comedies and things like that, where at the end of the movie, there's this beautiful scene. It's a beautiful wedding that takes place. Go ahead with that picture, Jason. It's this beautiful wedding that takes place, and there's flower petals dropping everywhere, and doves are being released, and there's harps and trumpets, and the bride and the groom go driving off in their carriage or their limo or flying their spaceship to wherever it is to live happily ever after. And we're left with the assumption that from that day forward, every single day of their marriage was nothing but bliss. Everything was perfect. Nothing ever went wrong. It was glorious. It was beautiful. It was problem-free. And unfortunately, there are many of us who bought into that fairy tale. And maybe we would be honest with ourselves enough to go, I didn't think we were just going to be completely problem-free. But there's many of us that subconsciously thought, that's what my marriage is going to look like. It's always going to be harps and trumpets. It's always going to be doves flying around. Everything's going to be just wonderful and perfect. And unfortunately, let me go ahead and bust that myth for you right now. It doesn't always turn out that way. Somewhere down the road, struggles come because of maybe some decisions that we make, maybe some choices that we make. Maybe there's some things that happen that are beyond our control, beyond our family's control. And maybe not too long after the wedding ceremony, we find out that this person that we just committed the rest of our lives to has some imperfections that we weren't aware of beforehand. Maybe they find out some of those things about us. Maybe we find out that they're not perfect or we're not perfect. Maybe we woke up one morning and said, so that's what you look like without makeup. Maybe we didn't know about the snoring issue for either spouse before we got married. And did you know there are multiple ways to load the dishwasher? There's my way and the wrong way, right? And that's or which direction do you put the toilet paper on the toilet paper roll? How many fights have started over something like that? You can get into bigger things, dealing with in-laws, dealing with our finances. We're going to spend our money on this, or we're going to spend it here. Or we don't have enough to spend there, but I want to spend it there. We're trying to catch up with everybody else and be like everybody else and make our marriage look like everybody else. It doesn't look that way. Maybe there's other things like addictions, resentments, built up anger. Maybe not even at our spouse, but at other people, but it enters into our marriage relationship. There's lots of different things that can come in and cause problems, cause struggles. So here's the reality. There is no perfect marriage. And the people that you look at, maybe people in this church, or maybe parents or grandparents, you say they have the perfect marriage. It might be perfect in your eyes, but if you ask them, they would tell you, oh, no, it hasn't been perfect. There is no trouble-free marriage. In every, even healthy marriage, there are times where things are great and we are thriving, and there are times when things are not so great and we are barely surviving. In John chapter 16, verse 33, Jesus is talking to his disciples. This verse will be on the screen, or you can look it up yourself. But he says, in this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. So if you're in the world right now, everybody check your pulse, take a deep breath. Are you breathing? Are you living? You're in this world. Guess what? At some point in your life, you're going to have trouble. Multiple troubles would be my guess. Jesus never promises that our lives will be trouble-free. He never promises that our marriages will be trouble-free. He just says, I'm bigger than the problems. I'm bigger than the struggles. And even if there are struggles, and even if there are problems, and even if there are imperfections, I can make it better. I can heal it. I can make it stronger. Victory is possible, especially if God is at the center of that relationship. But let's, just for time's sake, let's quickly talk about how do I deal with that? I thought it was going to be happily ever after. It's not. What do I do now? How do I get through these struggles? How do I get through the problems? How do I deal with those things in a way that's positive and healthy and a blessing, not just to me, but to my spouse, to my family as well? Let me give you a few things you can do. And I encourage you, write these down. Get your phones out if you want. Tap them into your phone. I would even say, text them or tweet them to somebody if you want to. These are things that I believe can help any of us who are looking at our marriages and going, it's not happily ever after. What can I do about it? Here's some things you can try. Number one, don't expect perfection, but value progress. Your marriage is not going to be perfect, so stop expecting it to be perfect. You have flaws. You have quirks. You have imperfections. You have just committed a lifetime of marriage to someone else who has flaws and quirks and imperfections. Many marriages have failed because at least one spouse was bothered by the flaws and the imperfections and the shortcomings of the other. Or that particular spouse doesn't appear to be trying as hard to fix the things that I have a problem with. Or maybe I take a step back and I look at my marriage and I look at the problems, the imperfections, the struggles, the shortcomings that we have, and I look at somebody else's and they don't seem to have any of those things. And why can't we be like them? Many of us give up. We walk away. We quit trying because we assume it'll never get better. What if instead of expecting perfection, we valued progress? What if instead of constantly looking for the mishaps and the failures, what if I celebrated the times when I see things getting better? What if I thank God for the times that my spouse goes out of his or her way to bless me or to bless our family? What if when I see those efforts, I thank them for it and I try to do those things myself? What if I put more value on moving forward than I do on being perfect? There's a story I've shared with this church family before. It's found in the Old Testament in Jeremiah chapter 18, where God tells Jeremiah to go to this guy that makes pots for a living. He's called the potter. And he says, go to the potter's house and watch him make pots. And Jeremiah does that for a while. He watches this guy make these pots, take a lump of clay and make a pot out of it. And he says in Jeremiah 18, beginning verse 4, the pot that he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands. And so the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. And then the word of the Lord came to me and he said, can I not do this with you, Israel, as this potter does? Like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, Israel. Now, Israel, God's people at the time, had a lot of imperfections. Things were going wrong. They weren't being the kind of people God wanted them to be. And God is saying, I have the ability, if you'll let me, to shape you into something better, to make your lives better, to make our relationship better. What I want you to see from this particular story, this particular event in Jeremiah's life, is that I don't believe that the potter, the guy who's making the pot, sat down at the wheel, got the lump of clay and said, you know what? I am just going to mess this thing up. I'm just going to take this clay and I'll fling it on the walls if I have to. It's just going to be a colossal mess. That wasn't his intention. His intention was for it to be something beautiful and good and useful. And something went wrong. And what Jeremiah doesn't even take the time here is to point out what went wrong. Was there too much water? Was there too little water? Did he press too hard? Did he press not hard enough? Were there imperfections in the clay before he started? Was there something that got in there after he started? What was the problem? Jeremiah doesn't even bother with that. He says, you know what? Things went wrong. And what did he do? He made it better. He started over and he made it better. And God says, that's what I can do with you. And I believe that God isn't just talking to the nation of Israel. He's talking to us. In my own personal life, when I make mistakes, when I make choices that are harmful, when I do things that aren't good for me or for my family or for my marriage, when things are going bad in my marriage, and some of those things are because of choices that I make or things that are beyond my control, there are imperfections. Instead of just throwing up my hands and going, oh, well, forget it, and taking the lump of clay and throwing it out, what if I handed my marriage to God and said, God, this is imperfect, but I know you can do something useful with it. Shape it into whatever you want it to be. And celebrate the times that it gets better. Be thankful for those things. Don't expect perfection, but value progress. Number 2, don't allow struggles to weaken your marriage. Use those struggles to strengthen your marriage. All of us deal with problems in our lives in different ways. Some of us have a personality or whatever it is. If it's a problem at work, if it's a problem at school, if it's a problem with a friendship, if it's a problem in a family relationship, we're just going to attack it. What is the problem? Let's fix it. Let's hit it. Let's keep going at it until it's fixed. There's others of us that we see the problem. We recognize there is an issue, and so we're going to sit back and we're going to think for a while. And we're going to think about, well, what if I try this? No, that probably wouldn't work, so let me restart that and let me think about doing this. And neither way is inherently the wrong or right way to go. We deal with problems in different ways. The problem with those problems is that sometimes we allow whatever the struggle was, whatever the problem was, whatever the issue was, to weaken the relationship. I don't deal with it, or I don't deal with it correctly, or I focus so much on the problem that I end up weakening the relationship instead of allowing us getting through that problem to strengthen the relationship. Maybe there's conflict in our marriage. Maybe there's problems with our finances. We're in too much debt, or we're spending money in the wrong places. Maybe just there's sickness to deal with. There's doctor bills, and there's things going on with our kids, and I don't know what the answers are. Maybe just parenting in general has puts stress on my marriage. Maybe just our busyness. We are busy people. We got a lot of things on our agenda and in our schedules and things to accomplish, and maybe those things put stress on the marriage relationship. Whatever it is, many of us allow all these different factors to weaken the foundation of our marriage instead of strengthening it. Remember, we said your marriage is going to have problems. There's going to be issues, so what do we do? In James chapter 1, James says, beginning in verse 2, consider it pure joy. Celebrate it, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. I don't know a single person who has ever had a major problem in their life, who has had something come up, who has been in financial trouble, who has gotten the call from the doctor that they didn't want to get, who has gotten the call from the school office about their kid that they need to come pick up, who has gone through whatever, addictions and issues and things in their lives, and looked at those things and gone, woohoo, man, I'm glad I'm struggling right now. And yet that's what James calls us to do. Consider it pure joy when things go wrong, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. You learn how to get past it. You learn how to keep moving forward. You draw strength from getting through the failures. And he says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. It's not weakening our marriage when we go through problems. If we allow it to, if we attack those problems together and deal with them and get to the other side of them with the help of Almighty God, it's going to make our marriage stronger. Instead of turning our backs and walking away and going, I'm done. I don't want to fight this fight anymore. I don't want to deal with this problem anymore. I just wash my hands of it. We say, no, the problem's still here, and I'm going to keep working until the problem is gone. And I may have no other course of action than to drop to my knees and say, God Almighty, help me through this. But I'm going to believe He's going to answer that prayer and I'm going to get past it, because once I get past it, I realize how much stronger I am and how much stronger our marriage is because of it. Does that make sense? Don't allow problems to weaken your marriage. Use those problems to strengthen it. One more. Don't focus on the past. Instead, commit to the future. Don't focus on past mistakes, and don't continue to bring up past mistakes. Don't 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road go, you remember that one time? Don't focus on the past. Keep looking at the future. Commit to the future. I've told this church family, y'all haven't heard this, so just know it's a really good story whenever you get a chance to hear it. But I've told this church family before about the time that I got duped. I think it was by Jason Thomas, by the way. I got duped into eating a caramel onion. Was that you? Yeah. It was a prank, and I got tricked. I thought it was an apple. It was an onion. And I ate an entire circle around the whole onion because I thought other people were doing the same thing, and they weren't. It was just me. It's a really cool story, but I don't have time to go into it this morning. I will say this. That was a mistake. That was a shortcoming on my part, eating at least a good portion of a caramel-covered onion. The big issue with that was the stench that stayed with me for hours after the caramel onion was gone. It was at a camp retreat, and I'm laying in my bunk that night, and I'm still just the fumes. And I brushed my teeth. I ate an entire pack of gum and just like everything I could think of. And I was still, the next morning, I get up and people are like, whoa, still got that onion, huh? It stayed with me. Hurts in our marriages, hurt feelings, hurtful words, actions taken, dumb spending choices, pornography addictions, bad parenting moments. Those things and the guilt from them can stay with us. The incident already happened. It's done, and yet we might still hold on to the consequences for a while and the guilt that comes from it for a while. And then if we have a spouse that continues to bring those things back, that stench of that shortcoming keeps coming back over and over and over again. It makes it so hard to get rid of it. We need to learn to move past our past. We need to learn not to bring up the past of other people, especially our spouses. We need to commit to looking at the future. Romans chapter 12 and verse 9. You may have various Bible translations for this verse. I wanted to show you this one, the words of Paul from Romans chapter 12. Love from the center of who you are. From the very core of your being, love people that way. And he goes on to say, don't fake it. And then run for dear life from evil and hold on for dear life to good. I love the way that's written. I need to love my spouse. I don't need to be fake or insincere about it. It needs to be from the heart. It needs to be from the very core of who I am. But going on in the same verse, in the same context, Paul's saying there is bad stuff that you have done. There's bad stuff that your spouse has done. Run from it. Don't hold on to it. Don't keep bringing it up over and over again. Run from it. Be done with it. Move beyond it. But hold on for dear life to what? The good. Look for the good in your spouse and compliment them on it. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them why you love them. Hold on to that kind of stuff. That is going to be a blessing to your marriage. And the more we can let go of the past and commit to our future together, the better our marriages are going to be. I need to wrap up this morning, but I wanted to share one personal story with you of how this happily ever after myth came crashing down in me and Christy's marriage. Before we got married, I was sharing a duplex with another guy. He and I both got engaged to our future wives at roughly the same time. There was a time when his fiance, she was living here in Northwest Arkansas. Christy was still a student at Harding in Searcy, Arkansas at the time. So I'm living in Rogers. She's living in Searcy. We're just seeing each other periodically as we get closer to our wedding day. His fiance would come over and clean our duplex, and it was great. She'd clean the bathroom. She'd do dishes. It was awesome. And then she ended up moving into the house that they were going to move into when they got married. She didn't come around anymore like she used to. And dishes started piling up, and the carpet didn't get vacuumed all that much. And I'll be honest with y'all, I'm going to confess something to you here. We never cleaned the bathroom. To the point, I know, y'all are going to be grossed out before we go eat some soup today. To the point that in our tub, which was kind of an off-white color, the bottom of it was gray. Like a dark gray. Except for two places where we would stand when we were taking a shower. That was still off-white. I left for Searcy to go get married and go on our honeymoon, and my roommate was supposed to be moved out by the time I got back. So we had this wedding ceremony, and it was great. And we went on our honeymoon, and it was great. And we come back to Rogers, and it's kind of late when we got into town. I want to say it was a Thursday or a Friday night. We come into town, and I'm excited. Here we are, a new married couple coming into our house for the first time. And I open the door, and nothing's been vacuumed. Nothing's been put away. And wedding gifts that we had gotten are kind of in a pile over here. And I already explained to you the bathroom situation. And the dishes, bless his heart, he's a good man. He left the dishwasher open with dirty dishes in it. I don't know why, but he did. Okay, so here's this wonderful marriage that we had, this wedding ceremony, and this wonderful honeymoon that we went on. We're so excited. This is just going to be happily ever after. And we walk in, and this is what my brand new wife sees. I keep telling y'all, I am blessed that she stayed with me, right? Y'all get it, right? This is what she sees, and bless her heart, she just broke down. Just the tears came, and she couldn't stop, and it wasn't just about having an unclean house. It was, I have moved to Rogers, Arkansas. I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends here. All my friends and family are somewhere else. And look at my house, and it just, the emotions were too much. And she started bawling, crying. Now, new husband, I don't know what to do. Nobody told me this was going to happen. So you know what I did? I called her dad. I'm not kidding. I called him up it was late. I called him up, and it's kind of I think I broke your daughter kind of conversation, I said, your daughter needs to talk to you. And I take his cordless phone, I take the phone to her, and she's like, who, tears. Who is it? I said, it's your dad. She grabs the phone. Daddy. I have no idea what he even said to her. By the end of that conversation, things were fine. The tears had stopped. We're still, 20 plus years into this thing. But it very quickly went from happily ever after to not so much. All of our marriages are going to have problems and struggles. There's going to be mishaps. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be colossal failures. I didn't know how to fix it. But I knew in that moment who could. And so as I wrap up this morning, I want to remind you of Jesus' promise from Matthew chapter 11. Matthew 11, verse 28, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you what? Rest. I don't know all your stories. I don't know your marriage stories. I don't know all your personal stories. I know that in a group this big, there's some people here this morning that are struggling. because of choices that they've made or because of things that have been done to them or things that have been done even beyond their control. And you've been carrying a burden for a while. You may have even walked in here this morning carrying it. And I want to challenge you with this. For you personally, whatever the struggle is, whatever the issue is, whatever the problem is, my God says, bring it to me. I'll give you rest from it. I'll take it. I'll make things better. Specifically this morning, if your marriage has become a burden instead of a blessing, don't give up. Don't walk away from it. Walk to Jesus. Bring it to him. Because the promise is he'll give you rest. If we can help in any way this morning, we want to. We're going to stand together in just a second. We're going to sing a song together to make it convenient for you. If you have a burden that's on your heart that you're ready to be done with and walk away from, come forward this morning and let us know what that is. We will pray about it. We will believe that Jesus will hold to his word and will give you rest. Let us help if we can while together we stand and sing.